let's kind of touch on some of the dynamic stuff and maybe some of the things now behind the instruments that when we're approaching this whole idea of environmental dynamics of how we can push that air, and maybe some of the ways we can go from, like, say, the verse to a chorus to differentiate sections. So, maybe let's just keep it like the same jammy vamp thing. So, nothing is changing harmonically, except for the fact that we're going to try to push and generate energy.
Okay, gotcha.
So let's just try something. We'll start with the verse. Yep.
Cool.
All right, one of the big things that I'm noticing just when we're jamming like that is, again, verses by nature tend to be a little bit more inside. It's like we're not necessarily playing any quieter. Like, we didn't have a big dynamic contrast. It isn't like we completely broke it down for the verse.
Yeah.
We just wanted to push a little bit more air on that chorus.
Shorter notes, tighter. Yeah. And then the chorus part getting bigger. Longer notes. Boom. Da, da, da,
yeah, it just puts more weight, generates some intensity. Everything was still focused. But, for me, like tightening up the hi-hats. And then as we're shifting sections, one of the techniques that feels like second nature, but you can apply is rather than playing a fill or before you play a fill, you can maybe start to open up the hi-hats. You want to start giving it to the listener a little bit that, like, all right, a change is about to happen before this big fill.
Yeah.
So I could do something like this.
Coming in, I was like, I wanted to jump in as soon as that point came up. I was like, oh, here it comes. The hi-hat starts opening up.
Totally. It's actually kind of like a way for the listener and the band again to like give a little heads up that, like, all right, something's about to happen. Like, everything's kind of about tension and release and push and pull. So, like, I just want to give it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And everything. And your playing does the same thing. You open up. It's less tighter. The notes get longer.
Another thing too, bass-wise technique would be just the register in which you play in the notes. I was kind of in a higher octave, then went to lower octave, as well as what string you're using. The E string, whether you're playing a P bass or a J bass, there is a lot fatter by nature. It's a thicker string. So when I go to this D, as opposed to this D, it has a different timbre. The E string D is a little fatter. I'm gonna use that when I get to that chorus to lift me up, even though I might be playing the same D, the same register, So little things like that make a big difference.
Cool. Let's talk about one of the things that we do a lot, which is kind of use some techniques to build things up and break things down. Like, we just talked right now about just like the simple little things of opening up the hi-hats before a fill, or just the fills in general. But let's talk about things like builds and crescendos, which are ways that we can start at a lower volume, lower dynamic level, and kind of crescendo in. So let's use the same technique, but let's do like a 2-bar 8th note build going into the next chorus.
Okay.
So let's do that. So here's a build. So that simple crescendo can kind of put some weight. And
Absolutely, yeah.
However you voice it, like, you know, even there, I'm like, oh, I could have voiced that on the toms to maybe make it a little bit fatter and push a little bit more air, you know. But using some of those techniques will also help push you in and out of sections.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that I realize I do a lot, and I think you do it too, is if we're going to start crescendoing something, we accent the first note and kind of create this big downbeat of sound, and then get underneath that. So an example would be this. So I'll just play it on the drums.
Okay, you got it. Go for it. Exactly. I think the technical term is sforzando, right? For that?
Yeah, sforzando. Yeah, which means pretty much make an impact, duck, and build from underneath that, rather than constantly, you know, just
going low and then getting up. Yeah, it definitely brings your attention to that moment, like boom, now here's something happen.
Yeah, it kind of gives you something to get underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it could be like a 1-bar build. We're doing 2-bar builds right now. You know, 1-bar builds are great. Now let's talk about another thing, especially like when it comes to going back from the chorus into a verse, or maybe going into a solo section, about breaking it down. And, you know.
Okay, yeah, a similar technique I would say is used where you hit like, usually we would hit like a big note and then drop under that, but only this time we wouldn't be building into something. We'd just be hitting something and dropping down there and hanging out, living in that zone, right?
Yeah, and we do it at the top of a phrase.
Yeah.
So we do it, and a lot of times they call this on the one. And everything to where you can break down to nothing. And the whole idea and the reason why we do this is, especially for a soloist, to try to give them a starting point, so they, you know, they don't have to just come in blazing right away. They can actually develop something and say something, and most of all, when we bring it down, it also helps them be heard. You know, so that's really a point of getting underneath. But we do that by just kind of nailing that one real strong. So let's just do real quick out of a chorus, and we're gonna go on the one.
Like a beast over here. Let's do this.
All right. Cool. So we tried to break it down as far as we could go. And even like when you tightened up your notes, you went to the palm muting thing there.
Right.
The instinct was to come back in with the 8th note hi-hat. But sometimes I go like, all right, can I get away with just playing quarter notes on the hi-hat?
Yeah, if I'm playing, I was playing the 8th notes, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like we said, you've already got it.
I've already got it. You don't have to do that with me. Exactly.
You know.
And then there was levels to the breakdown. It was like we broke it way down, and about halfway through what it would have been probably a verse section or something, it kind of was like, okay, we took another level up, but then we still had room. We left room to get to the chorus.
Yeah, during the course of a solo, that's dictated by the soloist. We're following, like, depending on how long that goes or when it happens. And one of the things that I think is a really good tool where we talk about pulse being those quarter notes and translating pulse and illustrating pulse. Mm-hmm. What we did actually is broke it down to like the two root functions of it. I played quarter notes on the kick drum, and I didn't play anything else. I let those quarter notes come through for everybody to go, here's the quarter notes, and you played 8th notes, which was that comfortable subdivision. Yeah. So really what we were doing was we were outlining the pulse with the changes, along with the changes.
This guy.
All right, another way that we can break things down is not necessarily hitting on that one. We can actually get out on the previous measure. So we can come out on like the and or the last eighth note or last 16th note. And that way, I kind of call it a suck cut, to where everything, the energy's building and it's here and here and it's just gone. So and we're down. Then we're rolling at that low dynamic level. So let's do one of those where we're going to cut off at the last second.
You want to stay in that same groove that we're
Let's just stay in the same groove.
Gotcha.
There we go. So there's lots of different ways that you can transition where you want to change the dynamic and you want to change the environment, the overall vibe, but remember that pulse, that forward motion. So there's your environmental dynamics. You can change one thing without kind of affecting the other.
It's so important to communicate with your drummer or your bass player on those things and be really the eyes looking at each other and looking at what he's doing and being like, I think you get to it. We've at a point we've playing a long time together. I don't necessarily have to look at you. I can kind of feel what you're going to do, but
I knew you were just going to say that.
But that communication and doing these things together, or not together on purpose.
Yeah, yeah, with intent.
Yes.
It's just doing them over a lot of years. Like you find things that work. So like what we encourage you to do in your band or with guys that you're working with a lot is try things out, develop your own systems, and as long as they never turn into gimmicks, as long as they're not silly.
Right, totally. And just real quick aside, I just thought about during that. I think it was this last example we did when we broke it down on the eighth notes. I put an emphasis on the upbeat, on the end of the eighth notes, which helps to create a lot of forward motion and have a more interesting kind of pulse to it, than rather just sticking with an eighth note where the volume of each eighth note is the same. So here's some even eighth notes. Now I'm going to play them with it end is accented. Feel a difference in those two, and one's not better than the other. It's just a choice that you can make. But that's part of the tools you have. You don't have to play each note the same volume.
Can we do that one more time? And I'm going to play the kick drum because I want, especially since we're talking about two instruments that are in the same dynamic rate, or not dynamic, but same sonic characteristics.
Yeah.
Start with the even eighth notes, and then move into the upbeats, and just notice overall how that feel changes. When it's moving around the pulse.
Let's do it.
So there we go. So that's great. Like that's great. Feel. That's really kind of help you push and pull.
And it's you can hear both of the instruments. You hear the kick drum and the bass jumping out on the on the in between there by accenting those notes.
Even check it out. If I outlined that groove, like just with like a really simple beat, like where we said like groove is a reaction to pulse. That's like reacting to pulse.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna play like a really simple backbeat groove, and then can you play that same thing and notice how things change? Start with even and go to the up.
Gotcha.
Accent. See, that's cool. Like instantly, like it kind of was like, all right, now we're groovy. Now I see the big picture of what we're doing. I was able to sit inside of it a little bit more, and like I feel like my ability to kind of push that air is more available. Like I want to get in on it. I can drop in on those downbeats.
Those subtleties, those little subtleties make a huge difference. Especially when you're talking about playing in a big stage and that sounds amplified, hugely.
Yeah, because totally, like a lot of the busier stuff, like there's a reason why like bands like the Rolling Stones are arena bands. It's not just good songs, but they actually their music functions good in arenas. It translates really well.
Right.
And stuff, so having these grooves that maintain focus, and I didn't need because check it out. Let's do one more example where you're gonna play those upbeats, and now I'm gonna take that first approach and I'm gonna play those upbeats with you.
Okay, just start on the upbeats or start with this?
Yeah, we'll start with just that upbeat groove.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna start with my the outline groove, and then I'm gonna go into the locking thing.
Okay, gotcha.
There we go. Exactly, you've already got it. Like and does it mathematically work? Yes. Does it sound terrible? I guess not. But in terms of how we work as a rhythm section, like that's what we personally prefer. We're
probably a
aiming
little bit
for
of
those
taste
moments.
going on there.
Yeah. So
good stuff.
That's our cup of tea.